Soundcast.
This is a Village Soundcast Network original production.
And now, the weather. This is Less Than Live with Kate or Die, a bi-weekly podcast about comics from all angles. I'm going to talk to you about what I'm reading and doing in the industry, as well as interviewing some of my friends and favorite creators. So come along with me on this journey into geek culture. On today's show, we come to you straight from the dog park with special guest and co-writer of the enormously successful podcast Welcome to Night Vale, Jeffrey Cranor. Plus, sex criminals, gay astronauts, and witches. Let's get to it. Welcome back, everybody. Look at us. Only 2 weeks between episodes. Are you proud? I got back from another trip to California. When am I not there? And am in the middle of approximately 700 deadlines right now. But I come to you with this, a new episode of Less Than Live. Recently out, Scissorhands number 7. This is stuff from me because I got to plug it because you're already listening. Edward Scissorhands number 7 is out. So we're about halfway into, or 2 issues, I guess, into the second arc of the series. And it's starting to get a little creepy. So definitely look at that. I think it's really, really beautiful. Drew and Ricky are just killing it on the art in this series. So good. I forgot to talk about it last time, but at TCAF, which is coming up very soon, the second weekend in May, Ink for Beginners is coming out, which is a book that I am doing with Big Planet and Retrofit Comics. And that is going to be a 28-page comic guide to getting tattooed. I worked on it for a while. You know, it's something that I've been wanting to do, and especially more... It's like Kate or Die. It's like my webcomics in that, you know, I'm writing and drawing it, and it's sort of me talking to you through a little drawn avatar of myself. So it is by no means comprehensive, but I think it hopefully is a guide, especially for younger people who are interested in getting tattooed, not sure about the process, or, you know, just want a little extra help, I guess. I don't know. Advice, guidance from somebody who is very heavily tattooed, as I am. You may not know this from listening to my voice, but I have a lot of tattoos. I guess you wouldn't know. I could look like anything, right? But yes, I have a lot. And so I did this comic book, and that is going to be debuting at TCAF. It's going to be at, that's the Toronto Comic Arts Festival, by the way. And that's going to be at both the Retrofit table and at my table. So you should come see me with Tapatico. I'm probably going to be on the second floor. You can also buy that on Retrofit's website. You can buy it at Big Planet Comics. You can pre-order it on Amazon now, which is awesome and not a thing that I'm used to. So that's really cool. It's only $4. You should do it. Also announced this week was the variant cover I'm doing for Sex Criminals, which I will talk to our guest later in the show about. I can't really tell you what it's of because it is a secret cover, but I did it with Paulina Ganishow, and yeah, you can pre-order it through Image. It comes out July 22nd, and you don't see what it is until you buy the comic. It comes in a poly bag because it's really dirty. I don't know what else to tell you about that, but you should pre-order it because it's going to be great. Not a whole lot other than that. It is one of those times in every young writer's life when everybody needs a script this week. We have a really long interview in this episode with Jeffrey Cranor, who is one of the writers of Night Vale, co-creator as well. Welcome to Night Vale. If you don't know, which would be crazy because you're listening to a podcast and Night Vale is king of podcasts. Night Vale is a radio play style show about the fictional town of Night Vale, narrated by Cecil Baldwin, who plays Cecil Palmer. He's a radio host playing a radio host. I'm only just now realizing how difficult it is to describe Night Vale. It is a sort of Lovecrafty Twin Peaks style town, told like woebegone, about, you know, the goings on in this bizarre, supernatural, kind of horrific town. So Jeffrey is one of the writers, and he's coming up on later on the show to talk to me about comics, touring, etc. But for now, since we talked so much, let's get right to the stuff I've been reading.
What is Kate reading? What am I reading now? What is Kate they reading?
What am I reading now? Unlike our last episode, only 2 weeks have passed. So there was a reasonable amount of comics to come out that I could actually keep up on, which is nice because last time I was sort of diving through the giant pile of issues to be like, what did I read? What year is it? But yeah, a very reasonable amount of comics came out, and a couple of new things that I really liked to point out, and a few others that just continue to be great. Squirrel Girl just came out. I think they're, 4 issues in now? And that's Ryan North, Chris Giarrusso, Erica Henderson, and Rico Renzi doing that one. And it's Squirrel Girl, versus Galactus. I don't really know what else to tell you. It's great. It remains incredibly funny. And alongside Howard the Duck those are probably my favorite comics right now, or Marvel comics anyway. So good, so much fun, and so silly. Captara just started this week. Speaking of Howard the Duck and its writer Chip Zdarsky. Captara is something that Chip has been working on for a long time. It's a new series from Image. It's drawn by Kagan McLeod, and I think Becca Kinsey did some coloring on it. And that is, he's saying, yeah, I'm going to talk about it again later in the episode, but it's a gay-ish saga. It's just a really cool new space comic that has a really interesting, diverse cast and is a lot of fun. And it's cool to see Chip doing sort of a written, creator-owned thing, a series for Image, because he does so much great, hilarious work on Howard the Duck and then in so many of the visuals and Sex Criminals. So yeah, Captara, check it out. Southern Cross #2 just came out. That's Becky Cloonan, Andy Belanger, and Lee Lowridge doing the colors on that. This one is really cool. I got really confused when I picked up both Southern Cross and Southern Bastards. Very different comics. Southern Bastards is still very good, and I'm still really liking it. But Southern Cross is a new one from Andy and Becky that is a cool sort of sci-fi futuristic story about a girl on this spaceship that is full of dangers and trouble, and who knows what's going to happen, set off to find something and find out sort of what happened to her sister. And it's really cool. There's some amazing visuals. Andy is just like knocked it out of the park with all these crazy metal space station things. There's like diagrams and stuff on it. There's a whole issue that has this sort of almost like side scroller staircase thing. It's very hard to describe, but you should definitely check it out. Love that Becky Cloonan is doing more writing. I think she's awesome, and I've always loved her self-published stuff. And now with this in Gotham Academy, it's really cool. I like seeing. It's the same with Captara. Like I love seeing all these illustrators writing stuff now. I love when people just do different things. It's pretty basic, but check out Southern Cross. It's very, very good. Also out this week from IDW was Infinite Loop, which is a comic that a bunch of people I know, especially in the Valkyries, we're talking about and we're excited for. And it's by Pierrette Collinet and Elsa Charretier, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And it is the story of a girl who is sort of set to stop anomalies and tinkering with and terrorism in time travel. So that one is a really cool concept, but it is also, and it states it pretty heavily sort of in the back matter of the issue, that it is about the complexities and difficulties of same-sex relationships. So I'm fairly certain that the main character she's queer or gay, and that's really cool. I like it a lot. I found the expressions on the character didn't change very much, but there's so much potential in it, and it's a really, really cool story. The dialogue's really great, and I'm really excited to see where it's going to go, because it's an interesting concept, and I like some time travel now and again, especially if it's gay time travel. I'll take it. Miss Marvel came out last week, the newest issue, the second part of the, I think, Crushed storyline, where Kamala has a crush on a boy, which is adorable. From G. Willow Wilson. This one was drawn by Takeshi Miyazawa and colored by Ian Herring. And that is cute. It's sort of dealing with teenage crushes and heartbreak, and I love that. I love that stuff. It's also, the last couple of storylines have really been bringing in the Inhumans, and I think that's sort of going to be a major factor in the comic as it goes on. The first couple storylines with the Inventor were very self-contained within Miss Marvel's world, but it's definitely becoming part of the bigger narrative. And with the Inhumans, which is something that I don't know a ton about, but now, obviously I want to a little bit more, which is what Marvel wants, so congratulations. It'll be neat to see her, facing off against both some new villains and against, I think, some classic ones. I'm so unfamiliar with the vast majority of Marvel's expansive history, and especially when it comes to space stuff, that I don't know, I'm a little lost, but I'm having fun. And they managed to, even though they're bringing in these other characters like Medusa and like the Inhumans, it's still very readable for somebody like me who doesn't know all the details and know all the characters. So yeah, Miss Marvel, still good. Chilling Adventures of Sabrina finally came out with a second issue from Archie's new Archie horror line, which is like, I don't think I've ever wanted to work with or for a publisher more. Archie horror, that's so cool. Which obviously stemmed off of Afterlife with Archie and that series, and now Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, and they say they've got another one in the works. I don't know what it is, but I'm very excited. So Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, a little more Lovecraftian, where Archie horror is very much like a zombie story. This one also deals with a lot of, it's witches. Obviously, it's Sabrina and it's witches, but the character that is sort of the baddie that they're introducing, Madam Satan, she's so awesome. And this second issue is very much about who she is and where she comes from and what she wants with Sabrina. And it's so spooky and good. And it's also set in the 50s. And so it has sort of a retro style to it, even in the art itself. It's just so cool, and they promise that they're going to have a regular updating schedule from now on. So definitely check out Chilling Adventures of Sabrina 1 and now 2 from Roberto Aguirre-Sacasa and Robert Hack. Roberto, I think, also writes Afterlife with Archie. So yeah, it's great. Lumberjanes issue 13 came out, and it made such a splash everywhere because it's sort of the origin of the Lumberjanes and them on their way to camp. So that one's written by Noelle Stevenson and Shannon Waters. Brooke Allen's finally back on the art, which is awesome. I love Brooke so much. And Marta Liho doing the colors on that. And this one's so fun because you get to see how all of the different characters got to camp, what their families are like, and then they kind of have an adventure together, as one might expect. And it's cute. The creative team, I know, they push so much for diversity and for interesting and real families, and a lot of that is shown, and there was definitely a reaction that I saw, especially online, to people being like, hey, this is so awesome. This is what real families are like sometimes, single parent families and two dad families and a really expansive or really a very large mixed race family that is they're so cute. They're just so cute and sweet. So a lot of it's really great. So definitely check that out, even if you haven't been up to date on Lumberjanes. It's a very cute issue. Capture Creatures, speaking of cute comics, issue 3 just came out for that, and that is Frank Gibson and Becky Drystad of Frank and Becky, the amazing painting and comics duo. It is so sweet. A lot of people, obviously, it's sort of like Pokemon. That's, it is. It's about the kids capturing creatures, and the creatures are these, sort of animal-based magical characters. So, yeah, there's a little bit of that in there, but Frank and Becky's style is so cool and so interesting, and it's fun to see them do comics because it looks very different than the painting that they do, but it works very well. It's super sweet. The characters are adorable. They're sort of these two kids on an island, discovering all these creatures and what they want, and having adventures. So super adorable, all ages comic. Definitely give it to the kid of your choice. And that was pretty much it for this week. There might have been more that I haven't read yet, but I got off a red-eye flight yesterday from California, so this is what I managed. Check all of them out. No excuses. Read comics.
Are you ready for this?
you guys, listen up. One of the reasons we started making show notes on Tumblr was that people are always asking where they can find out more about or buy the comics I recommend each episode. Now, I'm a comics pusher by nature and talk about all this stuff because I want you to read it. And dudes, we are making it even easier. Less Than Live, as of this episode, now has a dedicated page on Comixology. You can find it right this second at comixology.com/lessthanlive. Now, you may already know this, but Comixology is a platform for buying digital comics, which you can read on your iPad, computer, or whatever other magical device I don't understand. I'm always going to encourage you to support your local comic shop when you can, and I still do, and you should. But digital comics are amazing for a lot of reasons. You're still supporting the creators, but the paperless platform of it means you can get as many titles as you want. If, for instance, you don't live near a comic shop, you travel frequently, or if you, like me, have simply run out of room in your house. Also, Comixology is always having sales. Like, they've got one on right now for Eisner nominees. They're like 50% off. It's crazy. They didn't even tell me to say that. I just saw it, and it's really cool. Other than making it easier to peruse all of my recommendations, check this out. If you sign up for Comixology now, and you haven't done it before, new users can take 50% off their first order of $15 or more. That's not just the Eisner nominees. That's anything. All you have to do is use the code LETH. That's my last name, LETH. Use it at checkout in your cart right before you pay for everything. And yeah, 50% off. You can buy a ton of stuff. That's really cool, especially if you've been holding off on stuff like the Saga collection or whatever. You know, get a ton of it for cheap. Check out new comics. It's really great. So yeah, going forward, you can check out comixology.com/lessthanlive after every episode and pick up all the awesome stuff I'm recommending and reading, as well as stuff that our guests are going to recommend and read, because I want to put a focus on that as well. My stuff's there too, if you feel like checking it out. But hey, no pressure. Just read more comics, everybody.
Kate's gonna interview you. Kate's gonna interview you now. She's gonna ask a question. Kate's gonna interview you. Kate's gonna interview you now. This is the interview section.
So today we are talking to one of my favorite people and a fellow podcaster. This is Jeffrey Cranor, who is the co-writer of Welcome to Night Vale. Hi, Jeffrey.
Hi, Kate.
Hi. Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing real well. I'm up. I have some coffee. I'm sitting at my desk.
Very nice.
It's a nice morning. It's a little overcast, but fair out.
And you're in New York, right?
I am. I'm in the state of New York.
Lovely.
It is.
So I know that Night Vale right now is on tour. Are you with them or meeting up with them, or are you hiding out from this one?
I'm currently hiding.
Yeah.
I was on the first part of the tour for the first couple weeks, all the way up through Dallas, and then I went home, back to New York, and I had a wedding to go to for my cousin, and then my wife Jillian, who's a choreographer and a dancer, she had a show in New York City, so I came back to watch her show, and then I fly back to Seattle Saturday to rejoin the tour.
Nice. And how long did it go after that?
Oh, that's just right at the halfway point, so it'll be another like full month. So it'll go through the end of May. May 21st, I think, is the very final show.
Cool.
Yeah, it is cool.
So you guys have been touring now for like 2 years? 3?
Not quite that long. A year and a
Yeah.
half we've been actively touring.
That must be so crazy.
It is really crazy. We were in 2014, that's it. January 14 was the first time we went out on tour, like not just doing a live show, but like organizing, like, hey, let's go to sleep in a hotel and wake up and drive to another city in the morning and do another show. And so it's been almost a year and a half. And last year in 2014, we were away from home for about 4 months out of the year. So it was a really intense process.
Yeah,
for all of us who have been used to just living lives where we stay at home all the time.
And don't drive around the country.
Right.
So are you guys in a bus? Do you do a van? Do you have a giant stretch limo?
We do. Just helicopters.
Helicopters,
that's it.
right.
Helicopter. We have a van. We have a giant Sprinter van on this tour.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in the time that I've been gone from the tour, it sounds like we broke the van and had to get another van.
Oh, God.
We had the van for about half a day out of New York City when we left on tour at the end of March. And then suddenly, like, all of the sensor lights started going off in the van.
Oh, great.
Just like, engine check, needs service, blah, blah, blah. And then suddenly, like, then the van would just sometimes beep for no reason while we were driving it.
Does this not seem like fairly appropriate for you guys, though?
Yep.
Like, if the van just, everything went completely black for a while, and
yep.
this would feel just right.
That's pretty much it. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah. So anyway, so we're just in a giant Sprinter van, and then we have a minivan as well, because this is a larger tour than we've taken. We have anywhere between like 8 and 14 people on the road at any given point.
Well, that was the thing that I wanted to ask about. So I've seen Night Vale live twice, for which I'm very lucky. And I missed it in LA, and I was there, which is the funniest thing, because I didn't even know. I didn't. And I was at karaoke the night before, and a bunch of my friends were like, "Yeah, so we'll see you at the Night Vale show tomorrow." I was like, "What?"
Oh, no.
Well, Jeremy and I already had tickets to Medieval Times, so
sure.
We had to go for our 4th time. It was very important. But yeah, that was so funny. But the thing that I was wondering about it is that, has become such a production, because the first one I saw was pretty much just you guys, Cecil. There were like a couple guests and then the weather, and I feel like it's expanded quite a bit since
it has. We have been doing like so this will be the first tour that we've had John Bernstein, who is Disparition, who does all of the bed music for all of the Night Vale episodes on the podcast. And John's been touring with us, which has been great, because he's such an amazing musician, and it makes a huge difference from an acting point of view, and I think from an audience point of view, to have the live music underneath Cecil, because John can take the theme, play underneath the scene that Cecil is performing, but he can move it in or out of the scene along with what Cecil's doing, right? So the music always sort of times out with the scene no matter what. And when you're running canned music off of an iPod plugged into the soundboard, it's just a little bit less. It doesn't move quite as much with what Cecil does. So that's been really cool, and I just think it gives a richer sound, a richer show when you have live music.
Well, he played at the New York Comic-Con show that I saw, I think. Didn't he?
He did.
Yeah.
He did. Actually, that one was really interesting, because when we're in New York, because John lives in New York too, when we're in New York, John usually will find some really amazing like singers and French horn players and all kinds of stuff to kind of like fill out the sound.
Yeah, that was really cool.
Yeah, it is really, really cool. And then in LA is great, because we just know so many people in LA, and they can just pop on and we'll have a part for them and just slap it into the script.
Hal lives out there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Who else?
Well, let's see. Jessica Nicole, who
Yes.
plays Dana, she lives out there. And Will Wheaton, who plays Earl Harlan, lives out there. So he was at the show. And Molly Quinn, who plays the voice of Faye from the Numbers episode, lives out there. So we wrote a special part for her. So all 4 of them came out to that show. Oh, and Mark Gagliardi as well, who plays John Peters, the farmer, lives out there.
I'm so sad that I missed it. That's so awesome. I know. Because I saw, which one? So I saw that one, and then the Thrilling Adventure Hour mashup, or the first part of it that you guys did at Emerald City last year. And that was John DiMaggio and Molly Quinn were there, and Hal Lublin.
That's right.
That was... See, I know my
really
stuff.
Great. You know your stuff.
I know my Night Vale history. So you guys didn't do Emerald City this year.
We did not.
To bring it back sort of vaguely into the realm of comics, because obviously this is sort of a nebulous thing where it's a comics podcast, but you are a podcast.
Yeah.
But also a comics aficionado, and live sort of a similar life, I think, because you guys are traveling everywhere and making all these appearances, which... the life of a comics person is very akin to. So are you guys doing any cons or things like that this year that you know of?
I do know of two. We're doing 2 cons this year. Definitely. We're going to do San Diego Comic-Con.
Right.
Because we are real big fans of like independent small productions.
Yeah, little like local shows. Like San Diego Comic-Con.
And yeah, So we're doing San Diego Comic-Con. We're going out there through Harper Perennial, who's our publisher.
Right.
So it'll be just Joseph and me going out to San Diego for that.
Sweet.
And then, excuse me, sorry, I don't have a cough button on my computer. And then the other thing was the GeekyCon. So Cecil and Dylan and I are going to go. Cecil, who's the narrator of the show, and Dylan, who plays Carlos, the scientist on our show, and the three of us are going to go to GeekyCon in Orlando, which is less of a Comic-Con and more of a fan convention.
I think that'll suit you guys.
Yeah, I think it'll be a lot of fun.
That's
and
neat.
Our dear friend Maureen Johnson has been asking us for more than a year to come to that, and so we're like, we'll do it.
Intern Maureen.
Yeah, intern Maureen. Whatever intern Maureen wants, we've put her through the ringer so many times. We will do anything for intern Maureen.
That's awesome. And I know Cecil and Dylan are doing FlameCon in New York.
Yes.
Looks like the most amazing thing. I've never been so jealous of a Comic-Con, like that I can't go to it.
Are you not gonna be able to go to it?
Well, I may or may not. Nothing has been announced yet, but I may or may not be in New York the weekend before. So I can't really make it work.
Gotcha.
I want to so badly. Everyone I love is going to be there. It's like, those guys, Chris Anka and Kevin Wada. And for people listening, you should go to FlameCon. It's the, I think, second weekend in June in Brooklyn, and it's the first LGBT comic show. So that's going to be awesome. But yeah, I know Cecil and Dylan are doing that. But I don't know if it'll be a Night Vale thing or if they're just like hanging out.
Yeah, I mean, I know that Cecil's doing it, and I know he'll be part of signings and panels and things like that. But yeah, I don't know the extent of it. I do want to go see some of that though. I just now I didn't know what date it was, but I'm absolutely around then. Maybe I'll go check that out.
I think it's the 11th. Yeah, because I had someone come up and talk to me about it when I was in New Jersey last weekend. in Secaucus.
That's awesome.
And yeah, and I was in New York for one night. I was in New York for like 4 hours. It was very exciting. But yeah, he was talking about it, and you get a lot of people who come up to you at shows, and I'm sure you get the same thing where people are like, "Hey, you should come to our show. Check out our con or check out our event or whatever." I'm sure you guys get a lot of that.
Yeah, definitely.
But he's like, yeah, it's this thing called FlameCon. And he started talking to me about it. And within 30 seconds, I went from like, yeah, okay, yeah, send me your email to like, oh, what? I want to be there. That sounds so cool. But yeah, it's in Brooklyn. I'm just looking it up here so we know. I'm not meaning to do like a plug for it, but since we got on the topic,
you should do a plug for it.
It's just exciting. It's a really cool
I'm
thing
excited
to see.
for any convention that is in my city, right?
Yes.
Like that's a fairly easy place for me to get to, which is way closer to where I live than Emerald City Comic Con.
Yes.
As delightful as
same here.
Emerald City is. Yeah.
Saturday, June 13th in Brooklyn, Grand Prospect Hall. But yeah, no, it looks like it's gonna be really cool, and they've got Cecil and Dylan. Every photo of Dylan is the cutest photo I've ever seen. Oh my God. Yeah. It's been a weird experience not being on tour for the past almost 2 weeks, about like a week and a half, and then looking at everyone's like Instagram and Facebook feeds of tour. And it's just really funny to see nonstop photos of Dylan being supremely delightful. He's so pretty.
He's so adorable, and I just love him to death.
I added him on Facebook primarily so I could look at all his pictures. I mean, we're friends, but
sure,
he's so cute.
He's adorable.
So speaking of all of this, you guys are doing a book.
Yes.
So you're going to the show with your publisher, like to San Diego.
Yeah,
I'm assuming. So when is the book coming out, and what's the deal with it? What is it?
What is the deal?
Tell me the deal.
Amazon says it's coming out October 20th, so I'm going to take them at their word. So it'll come out towards the end of October, and it's a full blown novel. That's what we did. We decided let's write a novel, and it's 400 pages of new Night Vale storyline.
Wow! And
we decided early on when we were writing it, or when we were planning the writing of it, that we didn't want to do an entire like a 400-page episode, right? Because like 400 pages is like 11 hours worth of reading, and so it seemed a little, at least, right? So it seemed a little bit weird to be like, well, I'm pretty sure Cecil's radio show isn't 11 hours long, and so we were like, well, it doesn't make any sense to like have it all be in the style of the podcast. So we're like, it's a novel. Let's write a novel. So we instead of telling it from Cecil's point of view from the radio station, we decided to keep him as a character, but tell it from Night Vale's point of view. So we picked two other characters to lead the charge, and they're tertiary characters from the show. They're not major regular characters, but we said, let's tell their lives, let's tell the stories of what's going on in their lives right now and put them on some crazy, dangerous adventure within the realm of Night Vale, and say that that's going to be the story we're going to tell. So we kind of address some of the major mysteries of the show. We deal with the man in the tan jacket, which has been kind of an ongoing storyline.
Yep.
And we, have recurring characters throughout the novel of Cecil and Carlos and old woman Josie and the Ericas. So that's been a lot of fun to incorporate them, but to kind of tell it from two relatively brand new characters in Jackie Fierro and Diane Creighton.
Awesome.
Yeah, it is awesome.
For that.
Yeah, I'm super excited because it gave us a chance to kind of break out of just telling the story through only the medium of radio and the medium of podcast. It gave us a chance to like put things on paper, and you can just you can spend more time in a character's head, and you can spend more time developing a scene and things like that. And then also you can just spend a lot more time really developing the lore of the town and the history of a character, etc.
I think that's really cool, and it's probably a really smart move, because I think it's so hard to dissociate the narration of Cecil from Cecil's voice. So I think that would almost be difficult to read something that long while trying to sort of maintain that voice in your head. Right. I know that would be like an issue for me. So I think that's good, because I wasn't sure when you guys were doing it if it was going to be like, a book about the town or if it was going to be a narrative or whatever. So that's really cool.
Yeah. Somebody on Twitter, when we were talking about the book, we absolutely missed our calling here. But somebody said that they really hoped that because I mentioned that it was a 400-page novel, and they said, well, I hope at from pages 300 to 350 are just sheet music. It's like we would just kick it to the weather and just have like a symphony about 3/4 of the way into the book.
That would be incredible.
I was like, that's an amazing idea. Thank you, Twitter friend, for making that point.
I would love that.
We dropped the ball on that, so I apologize.
Well, in the next book, right?
Yeah.
So, you and Joseph Fink wrote that together, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
And because I remember back in the yonder day of like a year ago, you guys originally talking about that, but how long did it take?
I think it took, from inception to completion, it's taken more than a year, definitely. Right? Because like just yesterday, I just sent off my final like notes on the proofreading version. So I think we're all done with any type of editing. I think now the publisher has everything they could possibly need to put it out there, except for our dedication and acknowledgments. So we still have a couple more things to do. But in terms of the novel itself, we wrote like a proposal is what we did. We wrote like a 10,000 word proposal to the publisher. And then that was like fall of 2013 when we put that together. And then it was like early 2014, like February, March, when we said, let's actually put an outline together so we know how the book is going to end. And so we spent from about February to April hammering out the outline of the book. And then we spent probably a good 2.5 months just straight out writing the first draft. So all in all, the actual writing process took probably about 3 months. And then you added another like month and a half worth of first and second rounds of editing. But all in all, like we had planned out the outline and talked it through and built things that was several months in the process. So I think it's fair to say a little under a year.
That's cool. That's crazy. It is crazy. Such an undertaking.
It is. But listen, here's the thing. Like you probably get this too, like writing in serial. Like this is the thing that like we share with comic writers, right? Which is that you're writing a serial. Every issue, your character is the same character, just moved farther along down his or her or their own timeline.
Yeah.
And I think that what's really great is that you build out a universe and you build out these characters, and it does become a little bit easier in some way to write that. Like, I sort of have an idea of how Night Vale will be. If I started writing a new podcast altogether, it would be a real reset button. It'd take a lot longer to write that novel because I wouldn't know the universe or the characters yet.
Well, that's the thing I wondered about too, because I mean, I only just got into, you know, the first things I did were graphic novels, so it was all one story, and then it's done. And then, you know, going into the writing of series, the crazy thing about it is, you know, when I started, the first thing you think of is like, okay, well, what's this first arc going to be? Like, what are we going to do for 3 episodes? And then after a little while, you realize, like, man, I have to figure out what I'm going to do 20 issues from now or whatever. And I know that you have said a couple times that it's a bit of each, where you're sort of like, a lot of the times you don't know exactly what the next episode's going to be, and in other ways you know what's happening a year from now. How, like, is it a notes thing? Do you guys just have a giant file of like, okay, in 2 years, like, John Peters is going to be abducted by aliens or whatever?
Right.
I'm sorry, you know, the farmer.
The farmer.
I didn't mean to only say his first name.
It does kind of go both ways. I think what'll happen is that we'll get through kind of a big storyline. Like last year, we kind of went through this giant Strex Corp Centerness Inc. storyline, and hit a point where we're like, I feel this kind of resolved. There's a lot of new questions that we have to deal with, but you know, it's a radio show. Not every day is a giant news day, so we can pace ourselves. And so we do know and that partially is because it's independent and it's a podcast. You know, we're not beholden to ratings or sales or anything, which is really, really, really nice. It's a super big luxury that we have, so we can say, you know, let's take our time. Let's develop some new lore. Let's put out a thing about, you know, Angora rabbits, or let's put out a thing told in all second person point of view, a story about you or a story about them. Yeah. And I think can play around with that a little bit, because that's a cool, neat way to develop new lore. I think, for example, like Lot 37 has been an ongoing storyline in the show, and something we've been talking about more lately. But that was originally invented in a guest written episode by Glenn David Gold, who's one of our favorite writers, and you know, he liked our show. I don't even know if he was necessarily caught up entirely on all of the lore of Night Vale. He just wrote an episode,
right?
And was like, great, as long as we have room to write an episode that kind of stands on its own. And then that episode just so happened to create some new, you know, some new intriguing storylines that we could play with.
Well, that's kind of fun.
Yeah,
I like that. I like that you can have that sort of collaborative aspect to it. When somebody else comes in. And those standalones are some of my favorite episodes, like a lot of the times. Like, I love when there's just something going on at Dark Owl Records.
Right, I do too.
I love it. You know, I love the big sweeping storyline stuff too, but some of those I think some of that is like the most fun. It's like bottle episodes, I guess. I'm a sucker for them.
Yeah, I agree.
Because it's very much like one-shots in comics. I like writing those because you can do the whole thing. You just do whatever.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about that term, but yeah, that's it. Yeah, where just the episode, just the issue or the episode itself, you could just pick up or read or listen to, or however it is you're consuming that one storyline, and it kind of stands alone, is its own thing.
Well, it's the same. I think it's very similar in that, you know, that's a lot of the time how I will get somebody into a comic and be like, you know, you can read this issue without picking up anything else, but Night Vale is sort of the same way. It's like, oh, you can listen to this episode, and you don't really need to know, you know, 50 plus episodes.
Right.
We're 50 plus at this point, right?
Yeah, 66.
Oh my god, I'm a little behind. I will be perfectly honest.
No, listen, no worries. I always say this to people when I first started doing Night Vale and making the podcast. I would have friends, you know, and I came out of making theater, producing dance, things like that. And excuse me, sorry. But when I started making the podcast, I would have like close friends and family being like, "Oh, I haven't listened to your show yet," and I'd be like, "Listen, it's no big thing because it costs me nothing for it to just sit there." Whereas when I did theater, if I had like a 1 week or 2 week run of a play or a dance piece, and somebody close to me missed it, oh my god, it was it was the end times of that friendship, because you know, I have to be there for you to come see my play, right? I'm in this play.
Yep.
Come see the damn play. I am up on stage every night for 2 hours for you to come see, and I'm losing $2,000 producing this thing. Please come see it. In the podcast, I'm like, I don't have to be there. You can listen to it whenever the hell you want.
Yep.
So it's great. I love that.
I think that's very true. Like I'm thinking of all these parallels now because it's like, how is it similar? But it is. I mean, because I feel the same way when people are like, oh, I haven't read, your Bravest Warriors or whatever. I'm like, I don't really care. But if people tweet at me, and I'm sure you guys get this too, like I'll be in, I don't know, Puerto Rico or whatever, and someone tweets me and they're like, oh, I'm working that day. And I'm just like, I will never be here again. Like, skip work.
Right.
Come
That's
out,
Yep.
And I'm sure you guys get that, especially when you're in, because you guys travel, I mean, city to city, like you do a lot of not just like, New York and LA and stuff like that. You're in a lot of smaller places. So I'm sure that happens.
We have a running gag because it's not even a running gag. It actually is it's sort of a truism, which is that it never fails that after we go to a city or a place, that within 1 week we will get an email from somebody asking when we're going to come to that city. Not again, not return to the city, but be like, I just saw you're on a giant tour. Why aren't you in Philadelphia? Oh man, we were just there. We could go.
I love when I see people ask when you're going to come to New York.
Yes,
that's my favorite.
New Yorkers are the worst. We do so many things in New York, and so it's we eventually put our live shows there too. But yeah, New York has gotten more Night Vale than any other city could possibly come close to having. When we were in Europe last year, it was really great, and I in no means mean to like belittle anybody who wants to come see our show at all. Because I understand what it's like to be a fan and not necessarily like follow that musician or that artist's social media account close enough to know when they're doing stuff. But we were flying back. We were waiting at the airport in Dublin to fly back home. And I got like 2 emails in the same day of like, I can't wait for you guys. You guys should come to London someday. I just saw you did a European tour. You should come to London. Like, oh no, we just did 4 shows there.
Oh God. And it'll probably be a while before you can do that again.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine the amount of work that it takes to pull together a European tour. That just must be such an undertaking.
It is. You know what? The beauty of it all is having, living in a world now like of having like a booking agent over there and kind of like manage a lot of that. And then the thing that was interesting about Europe, unlike American and Canadian like promoters and things like that, when you go do a show at a venue, was that in Europe, most of them, except the Germans, most of them would put you up in a hotel. Like that was just, I mean, you're paying for it. It still comes out of your back end. Yeah. But there's something kind of nice about just already having a hotel taken care of for you, which is kind of nice. It's just another thing you don't have to mess around with in a foreign country.
Yeah. And that's nice. I bet that saves a lot of hassle.
Sure. Yeah. Fancy things in this world.
It's crazy. So normally I do this at the end of the show, but I'm just gonna go crazy and flip it around. Please. We haven't really talked about comics yet, and I try and keep it in the wheelhouse on account of it being a comics podcast.
You should.
I know, right? I try and keep on topic, but I haven't talked to you in a while. It's just nice.
I know.
But I am probably going to be in New York in June, so hopefully I'll get to see you.
Oh, I would love that. That would be great.
We'll make it happen.
We will.
But what are you reading? What do you like?
What do I like?
What do you like?
I will tell you. You introduced me earlier as a comic aficionado, and I appreciate that because it implies that I have some expertise in the world of comics.
Yes.
I love comics. I went through a long period where I wasn't reading comics. Like long period meaning like age like 20 until like mid 30s sort of thing. But it's funny because when I started in on Night Vale like 3 years ago, I don't know, just suddenly I found a lot more like comic readers were listening to our show. And I was like, oh, this is an ideal time to get back into it. And I remember tweeting out pretty early in our run, about like, hey, I'm trying to get back into comics. Like, what should I be reading? And I remember you.
Yeah, I remember enthusiastically responding to that.
did, which was great because you sent me some awesome stuff, and you sent me the two you right away sent me were pretty standards, which pretty big standards, which is Lock and Key and Saga.
Yeah,
and Saga, I love Lock and Key. Has been great. Saga has been the one I've been plowing through as much as I can. I love it to death. I think it's great.
It's so good.
I tried to go meet Fiona at San Diego Comic-Con last summer, and it was very difficult to do, as is everything in San Diego Comic-Con. So I would say Saga is the number one thing I've been plowing through, and I've was just with Hal Lublin and Mark Gagliardi in Washington, D.C. when we were all on tour together. And they suggested, although I will say I haven't started reading it yet, but maybe you can tell me if this is a good idea or not,
sure
which they had suggested a comic book, and I picked up volume 1 of it, is Mouse Guard.
Oh, yeah.
Which sounds really fascinating.
Oh, it's delightful.
So I have Mouse Guard now.
Yeah.
Which is
it's
fantastic.
really cute. David,
Wait, what do you know about
Peterson,
Mouse Guard?
I think, is...
Yes,
that's him,
it is David Peterson.
It's a little bit... Did you ever read Redwall? Like any of the Brian Jacks books? I sort of grew up on those, but that's a generational difference, I think. They were coming out when I was in like junior high. But it's sort of similar in that it is like Mice Warriors. But it's just... I've read like a little... They did a Free Comic Book Day book last year. I think they actually put out a Free Comic Book Day hardcover, which is crazy because you're giving it away.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just like stories about, mice warriors. It's just very cute, but also I think that the stories are definitely a lot more than just like, talking animals, which I enjoy. Stuff that's a little deeper in that way, but it's beautiful. Like I've seen a lot of the art, and I think Becky Cloonan actually just did a Mouse Guard story. I don't know if it's out yet, but she was posting pictures on her Instagram.
Oh, cool.
Which looks amazing because
she's
so great.
The art was really gorgeous in the book. I love the diversity of the styles that was happening in the volume I picked up, and then and there's also the I don't know, I'm a sucker for like anthropomorphic heroes. That's great.
Man, have you read Black Sad?
I have not. I will write this down.
Jeffrey, you will love Black Sad. It's so
Black
good.
Sad?
Black Sad, yeah.
Okay.
Black SAD. It was originally published, I think, in French. It's a European comic.
Okay.
So if that'll entice you even more.
Awesome.
But it's a story about it's all like anthropomorphic animals, but it's drawn by a guy who used to work for Disney. And I'm gonna try and look up his name because I always pronounce it wrong. It's Juanjo Gardino. See, this is terrible. That's why I don't want to say it. Juanjo Gardino is the artist, and it's written by Juan Diaz Gonzalez and Canales. See, this I'm really bad at pronouncing people's names, so I try never to do it on the air. But here we are. You can listen to me stumble. But if you look up Black Sad, it's basically a cat who is a detective. It's very film noir, and it's really cool because it's all, humanized animals, but their personalities so much fit what animal they are. And it deals with some really serious stuff. Like, it's not a kid's comic at all. There's a whole issue about basically a race war that is like all these, there's like polar bears and white tigers are, these sort of white supremacist characters and stuff like that. So it's a really interesting confluence of this very Disney-esque style. Like, you could picture it being a Disney movie, but it's definitely a lot darker. So I think you should definitely.
Oh, nice!
Check that out.
I will check that out.
It's so good.
Sorry,
I get
no.
This is my problem.
Listen,
I'm a pusher.
I'm happy to take out that. I feel like that's how I'm getting all of my comics. Is that I have to meet somebody who either makes that comic, or I need to have somebody whose opinions I greatly trust. And you are batting 1,000.
Thank you.
In suggestions. So anything you tell me to read, I will probably read.
Well, it's the retail thing for so many years. Is you start to get to you hear a couple of titles and you're like, oh well, I know if you like that, you'll like this. And it's always much easier when you are already reading all of the things that I have recommended and you like them. So it's like, well, I also like that.
I also would say that I would say that's a weird way to intro that.
That's fine.
I've also been really in love with Sex Criminals, and I'm looking forward to your cover.
Oh my gosh.
Did you draw a cover? Is that what
I
happened
did.
that I saw?
I drew it, and Paulina Ganesho, who was on our last episode, colored it for me. And I thought they were going to release the image online when they solicited it, but I guess you don't get to see it until you buy the comic. It comes in a hot pink poly bag.
Okay.
So you don't see it until you open it.
Oh,
Which
man.
makes sense because it's fairly graphic.
Sure.
But yes, Sex Criminals is the best.
Oh God, yeah, it's great. I've really admired how they have evolved that premise too, because that premise is so funny and so bizarre, and at its heart, sort of sophomoric. But I don't know. They've really elevated the storytelling, especially just in the relationship in the principal relationship on that. I almost said on that show in that comic. And I think it's such a smart, such a really mature and interesting comic.
I love it. I think that, it's changed so much. And I honestly was wondering just yesterday, if the tone of the comic was at the beginning what it is now, I don't think it would have had that same sort of explosive, like, buy this reaction, because it's gotten very serious in certain ways.
Yeah.
It's quite dark. Dealing with therapy and dealing with, medication and emotional issues and difficulties in sex and relationships. And that's the stuff that I love that. I love that it deals with it.
And you sort of, and I think what's really great is by setting it up as funny and over the top and so sort of surreal. But you have that wild sense of humor and just kind of the crazy bright colors of the early issues. And as it's, there was a distinct tonal change where we went a little bit more monochromatic, and I just think that was a really beautiful shift. But I think you sort of like build up that everyone that like, listen, we're going to deal with some really heavy ennui here.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like you sort of trust that they're doing it in a way that that they have your best interests at heart. They're not just trying to be depressing and write a broody relationship saga. Yeah. Like they really do have a great sense of humor and a really, really sharp balance.
And I think that it's a thing that I could totally see it, taking an upswing, the next arc being lighter or whatever. Yeah, I think they have the room to do that. And I mean, even when it is quite sad, there's still, background jokes all over the place.
Yeah.
Did you have you got up to the episode where they're in a bookstore? Because
I don't know. I think I'm 2 issues behind.
Okay,
is where
I think it was maybe the most recent one or the second most recent one. They're in a bookstore and they're having like a semi-serious conversation, but the title's on the books. Oh my God.
Okay.
The title's on the books, and there's like 100 in each panel. It's crazy. Chip said it pretty much made him lose his mind when Matt asked him to draw a bookstore.
Oh, that's hilarious.
But it's really great.
Oh, that's so awesome.
It's so good. And Chip he's writing 2 comics now on top of doing that. So it's crazy.
He just started, or I don't know if he just started, but it just came out of Howard the Duck.
Yeah, they're two issues in.
2 issues in? Okay.
Yeah.
What's the other thing
he just started one called Captara that is actually drawn by Kagan McLeod. So they're both from Toronto, which is cool.
Oh, cool.
I love Canadians collabing. What can I say?
Yes.
But they're touting it or pitching it as gay saga.
Interesting.
Yes. But it's just the first issue actually came out this week. And I talked to Chip about it at Heroes Con last year, where they were just sort of getting it together. So it's it's that crazy long distance between when you first come up with an idea and when it's actually printed.
Yeah.
But it's through Image, same as Sex Criminals, and it's about a crew going into space, and something bad happens, and one of the characters, or the main character so far, crash lands on a planet that's very He-Man-esque. But it's funny and weird. It's a very diverse cast. I think they really pushed for that. It's very noticeable, which is great. But yeah, it's it's very there's a lot of muscle dudes. There's a lot of like
Awesome.
sexy space muscle dudes, and I don't know, it's fun. I'm interested to see where the story is going to go. It doesn't tell you a whole lot in the first issue, but it's cool and it's beautiful. Kagan's art is just gorgeous. So,
Oh, that's great.
you know,
Oh, nice.
yeah, it's fun.
Oh,
I'm
very
glad.
exciting.
I'm glad Chip's writing stuff too. He's got such a great sense of humor.
Yeah, he's hilarious. I have followed him on Twitter for a long time and on Tumblr. And I think I don't know if I'm on Tumblr. I don't know. I don't pay as close attention to Tumblr as I do Twitter, but I do follow him on Twitter, and I think he's hilarious.
He's really great. Yeah.
Kate Leth plus Chip Zdarsky on Twitter is one of my favorite things in the entire world.
I love how many people will like just follow I can tell when Chip and I start talking to each other, and I see this happen to you and Joseph too, where it's like once he and I start a conversation, there's like 15 people favoriting each tweet, so they're just like watching us. It's so weird. It's such a
I think
thing.
Joseph and I spent one. What's really funny is when we're on tour, Joseph and I will be like in rooms right next door to each other, and it'll be like midnight, and we're both watching Chopped on the Food Network and just live tweeting the event and back and forth with each other, which is a lot of fun. I was going to say the other comic that I recently started reading, which is This Will Kill Any. If I had any level of indie cred, this probably kills it. But I started reading. I picked up the first 3 issues. I think there are 4 now of the Star Wars reboot.
I have actually not read that.
Can I tell you a really? And again, this is no judgment on anybody else. This is just my personal opinion, and I generally keep it very quiet, but it does relate to this. This is my controversial stance in that I do not like Star Wars at all.
Okay, I don't really either.
Okay, good. So I feel
You're in a safe space here. I'm not sure about everyone listening to it who just like took off their headphones and threw them across the room and will never listen to Night Vale or Lesson Live ever again.
I mean, I'm not like, passionate about it. I'm not going to go, I don't go stand on college campuses on a box screaming about how terrible Star Wars is.
That's the thing. I don't think it's terrible. I just don't love it the way that people love Star Wars. Like, I will watch it. I think it's good. It's just not,
It's just not my thing.
Exactly.
When I was performing with the Neo-Futurists in New York, where we wrote our own plays and performed our own short plays, and so I was on stage quite a bit, and I did a lot of plays that were political or brash or confrontational, and I have only once ever been booed by an audience and actually had people they wadded up their programs and threw them at me, not in a melodrama sort of way, but in a way of like, I genuinely pissed them off. And it's where I basically made a comment in a monologue that I just thought Star Wars was overrated. And I said it in much harsher terms than that, but it really, I don't know, it was really interesting that I was like, wow, of everything I've ever said, this is what got people going.
I have had that happen at the comic book store too. When I was still working there was a day when there was a trailer, an announcement for something, this is like a year ago, and I was just like, I love the Lord of the Rings trilogy the way people love Star Wars. Like, I love it. I've watched it 100 times. I've seen the extended editions. I watch all the appendices and like, I think they're amazing. I don't feel that way about Star Wars. I think it's okay. And like, these customers in the store were just like, how dare you can't work here? And I was just like, this is a comic book store. This has nothing to do with Star Wars. I happen to like a different trilogy of movies that only have one female character. So, whatever. It's fine.
Sure.
It's fine.
Yeah. Well, I picked up the comic book because in December, I was at, John Hodgman. John Hodgman was doing his Secret Society show in New York City. And I ran into Mark Gagliardi of Night Vale and Thrilling Adventure Hour fame. And Mark was standing outside talking to a couple. And he introduced me to them, and it was Jordan White and his wife, and they were super delightful, and I sat next to them, and Jordan White is an editor at Marvel, and he's the editor of the Star Wars comic book.
Oh, cool.
So I was like, oh, all right, congratulations to you, my friend. And but they were just such delightful people, and we talked about board games and as well as Star Wars and Marvel and things like that, and I was just like, well, what a really amazing thing to be able to sit next to these people. And anyway, so I Yeah. So I don't know. While I was out on tour, I was in a comic book store near there was a comic book store right across the street from one of our hotels. So I went across there and bought those issues. And I don't know, they're fairly enjoyable so far, right? Let's just hit the reboot on the whole thing, even for me. I feel like that's what Marvel and Disney have hit the reboot just for me, so I can see it all fresh with fresh eyes, and maybe I'll like it better this time.
Have you seen the trailer for the new one?
I have.
How did you feel about it?
You know, I think the same thing that bothers me about the trailer is what's always bothered me about the movies, which is that I think you had a whole generation, especially people my age, right? Like people kind of in their mid 30s to early 50s who grew up when those movies were coming out at the theater. Mm-hmm. And I think that they also grew up with all the action figures, just a standard fare at every toy store in the mall and stuff. And so I've always felt that we love Star Wars because we're nostalgic for it, right? Mm-hmm. There's a special type of love that comes with nostalgia. For example, I think objectively speaking, that Les Miserables movie that came out a few years ago was a terrible film.
It was really
but
bad.
I grew up with Les Mis, and if I watch that, I will find myself singing along and crying because it's so amazing. Because the nostalgia of growing up listening to Les Mis really moves me in a way that it doesn't matter what they did with that film, as long as everybody is, or most people besides Russell Crowe are on key, then we're fine. And it's great. You know what I mean? And I think that's what we do with Star Wars. Like our nostalgia makes us think it's awesome. But I don't know. I feel like as an adult, when I've watched even the original 1970s and 80s films, I'm like, wow, these are kids' movies. That's why we liked them so much.
Yeah, and I think there's nothing wrong with that. You know, I mean, obviously nostalgia is one of the biggest sellers in geek culture right now, and culture in general. Like, it's crazy. Everything is, the 80s all over again, which is good in some ways and bad in others. But I was intrigued by the trailer just because of the three sort of main characters they presented. There was not a white dude. So it's like, all right, this is kind of cool. Because that was always... My problem is, even as a kid, when those movies were for me, and even so many of my friends, so many girls love Star Wars, and I would never take that from anybody. I have always been the kind of person that if there's not a female character that I can identify with, except somehow Lord of the Rings has moved aside from that, because fantasy for me, I'm such a sucker for, so it works anyway. But if there wasn't a girl I could really latch onto and identify with, I had a hard time really loving it. Like, I could like it, but I wouldn't love it. And, Princess Leia was always like, I mean, she's cool, but I wish there were more different characters. So I don't know. I'm hoping there will be more in this movie. And since Lupita Nyong'o and Gwendolyn Christie are in it, I just hope they're really cool. Yeah. If they're really cool, then I will be into it.
Yeah, I'm hoping for the best. Like, I'm hoping that the reboot has this kind of aura of taking it out of George Lucas's hands, right? Of somebody who was not interested in representation, of somebody who was not even interested in acting or character development. He was interested in plot to move the next big fight scene forward, or the next cool looking planetary landscape type of thing. And,
Yeah.
And obviously, well, I take it back. He was very interested in representation when he created Jar Jar Binks. That was a super delightful and very culturally sensitive
Definitely
character.
Not racist at all.
Definitely not.
Oof. Oh, boy. That was a time, right? That was a time in our lives when those movies came out. Oh, boy. I'm going to get all sidetracked now. Well, I do kind of, and this is sort of going against what I just said, but I do kind of want to read that Princess Leia comic, because a lot of people have said it's actually really good, because that came out sort of alongside the new Star Wars, because there's a Darth Vader one and that Kieran Gillen's writing, and Princess Leia.
Yeah, well. I'm really interested in that too. Mm-hmm. That I've only picked up the first 3 Star Wars title comics, but I did notice at the store that they had the Leia and the Vader comics too. So I'm sort of curious about how they're tying those universes in.
Yeah, I'm curious. I will definitely check it out, because they were doing a Star Wars comic when they relaunched it, and a while back when Brian Wood was writing it, I checked out the first issue and I was just like, you can't read this without knowing everything about the movies. And I totally understand that, but I can't ever. I'm so annoying around nerds, because I'm just like, which one is Luke? Is he What's he do?
Yeah.
I'm the worst. And my brother is such an insane, hardcore Star Wars fan. Like, he's got tattoos, and he has this whole Star Wars den in his house. So I'm like the shame of the family.
Wow.
Because I'm only kind of into it.
Sure.
And in nerd culture, man, you are not allowed to be just kind of into something. You either love it or you hate it. It's weird, riding that fence.
It is.
Yeah. So I have just a couple of questions that I was asked from Twitter and on our Patreon. Do you mind if I pose them to you?
I would love to be posed questions.
All right, we'll do it. I'm gonna probably mangle some pronunciations again, but Joey Grzecki asked. I'm just going to read this from his question because I can't paraphrase it. It says, the last time I read an interview with Messrs., take that as you will, Cranor and Fink, they recommended Yoko Ogawa's Revenge and Marisha Pesce's Night, or Pessel's?
Pestle, yeah.
Pestle, there we go. Night film. Are there any other dark and spooky books that you would recommend? This can include comics. I mean, we already talked about Lock and Key, but...
That's a really good question. Really good spooky books to recommend. I'm a bad person to ask for this because as much horror as Night Vale is inspired by, I am definitely not the horror reader as Joseph is.
Right.
So I may not give you any dark and spooky books, although those are two good ones. Let's say this. I would recommend... here's what I would recommend. I would recommend going and, if you haven't watched all of Twin Peaks, and this is a seriously uninspired thing, but I really think there's two things I'm gonna say now that I just love and I could watch over and over again. One is David Lynch's Twin Peaks movie, Fire Walk with Me.
That movie's incredible.
I think, again, most people will tell you, and I'm not going to disagree with them, that it is not a good movie. But I will tell you this, that there are so many inspirational things in that film. There's so many moments of that film that I call back on constantly when I think of Night Vale. And Joseph and I had this one really long conversation about why David Lynch is scary. Because he doesn't really adhere to horror, but David Lynch's characters, and there are moments and characters that behave in a way that you do not expect.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's the core of horror, right? When something is not quite right. It's not being attacked by a knife-wielding maniac that is this frightening. Like, that is primally terrifying, but the actual core of horror is being in a room thinking there might be a maniac with a knife. And I think that's what David Lynch sets up in almost every scene, is something happening that you just cannot explain.
And it's also that dread, too, of even parts of the show where, like, nothing is really happening, but, like, Laura Palmer's mom, that actress, is just terrifying.
Right.
Like, any scene she's in, you're just like, what is she going to do? Like,
yes.
Like, she can just be walking down a staircase and her eyes are going in 17 different directions. You're just like, what?
Yeah, that's absolutely it. And the scene I was thinking of it's actually not from Twin Peaks, but from Mulholland Drive. There's the scene where the director, the young hip director who's now married to Jennifer Aniston in real life, that guy, he's going back to his house. And he gets there and he sees that there's the pool cleaner's truck again, is in the driveway, but he's not out at the pool. And so it's setting up the classic trope of the husband getting home to find his wife sleeping with the pool man or the milkman or the postal worker, whatever. But he gets home and then he's walking through the house and it's dead quiet. Like, you don't even hear the sound of like lovemaking or whatever in the bedroom. Yeah. And he gets in and then he opens the door to the bedroom, and it's not that he catches them in the act of making love. They're both just sitting up in bed staring at him. Oh. And it's a really terrifying moment. And neither of them are guilty at all. They're both like, you should leave. And that to me is like, not just horror, not from a male, like, oh, I've been cuckolded point of view, but from a point of view of like somebody who's just walked in on a situation like, this is not how this is supposed to be happening. Yeah. And I just think I think he gets it. I think that's really amazing. It's
so funny because I was having this exact conversation with my boyfriend Jeremy last night about a scene from Joe Hill's Heart-Shaped Box that is just like, that is a ghost book. And so it deals with possession a lot. And possession in some ways, I mean, is a thing that always I find very spooky because it is that. It's people acting in ways that, you don't expect. But there's a scene in the book, and I mean, it's pretty graphic, so I'm not going to describe it intimately. But there's a character where she is doing something that, you know, earlier in the book had been very much like, oh, that's disgusting. Like, how could you do that? And at the same time is like holding a gun to her head. And it's obviously the ghost is controlling her, but she's so like calm. And it's not that like as soon as he walks in, he breaks her out of it. She just stays in that place, and it's so scary because you're so used to that, you know, a character being weird, but as soon as someone is like shakes them out of it, but it doesn't work, you know, it stays. Ugh, I love that.
I would I'll throw out one more because I feel like I shortchanged Joey in his question by giving him David Lynch, which is something he probably already knows about. But I would say the other director is this really great Swedish director named Roy Andersson, with 2 S's in Anderson. And Roy Andersson made he made 2 of my favorite films of all time. One is called Songs from the Second Floor, and the other is called You, the Living. And he also has another one coming out. I'm going to look it up just to make sure I get the title just right, but it's one of my favorite movie titles. I haven't seen it yet. It is called A Pigeon Sat on a Branch Reflecting on Existence. And he is great because he's very Lynchian in setting up scenes that are dry and dark and confusing and strange. Although I think he has a much more overt sense of humor about it all, even as dark as it is. And most of his scenes are just like set tableaus of odd conversation or odd moments and kind of like surreal beauty. So I would say if you can find anything by Roy Andersson, he has a shit ton of. Can I say that? Maybe he has a lot of great.
We swear on our podcast.
Oh yay!
You can let loose,
I
man.
get to do this. Yeah, he has a shit ton of. If you just go to YouTube and look up Roy Andersson commercials, you will find a whole bunch of really amazingly funny and weird Swedish TV commercials that Roy Andersson made, and his movies carried that exact same kind of like modularity, like little short scenes, not like an overarching central plot. It's just a series of weird scenes in a universe. And I think there's something kind of Night Valian about that too. The idea of like, you know, this is ultimately all about this town, or it's all about this world that we're in. It's not necessarily about one arc. It's about these day-to-day events happening in all these characters' lives.
Cool. I like that. I will move on to our next question.
Please.
Adam Martin asks, which famous sci-fi or horror or comics character would you most like to see visit Night Vale? I would say, or even like, could you see visiting Night Vale? Who would fit, other than obviously all of the characters from Twin Peaks?
Oh, that's a really, really good question. Yeah, I've gotten a couple of these lately where it's putting somebody into asking, like somebody asked us recently, like, what would you do if you found yourself a citizen of Night Vale, like what, or a tourist in Night Vale? I'm like, I would hide under a rock.
Yeah, just scream, just scream and scream.
You know, actually, I actually know the answer to this, which is I would love to have Lying Cat visit Cecil's studio booth just for an entire show.
Just to be there, just to say.
I would give Lying Cat headphones and a microphone and just wait for all of the commentary following every Cecil story.
But seeing as the only word he can say is lying.
Yes.
That would be good. That would be really good. Oh, I love Lying Cat so much.
You had a Lying Cat t-shirt, and I want one so badly.
They're like, it's the only piece of merch that Saga has ever made, and they sold out at an unbelievable level and like never made more. It's so crazy. I found a bunch of them at Austin Books and Comics, actually. They had a bunch. They came on white and black, but obviously everyone bought black. So I think they still have some there, but yeah, I don't even know where you can get them anymore. It's crazy.
I'm going to use my Delta miles to fly myself to Austin and go buy one of those.
Yeah. Go hit up Texas.
I'm not even going to call the bookstore and just say, hey, can I order one? Have you ship it to me? I'm going to fly down and get it myself.
That seems reasonable. Our last question, because we did get a lot of very similar questions to things that I know you've answered before. And as a person who is frequently interviewed, I try not to ask those, what's your inspiration questions, because I hate them. But Nick Bungay asks, are there any plots that were developed early on that even you or Joseph thought were too far out there or too weird to do on the show?
Oh, interesting. Like plots that we may not have ever actually put on this show because they were so crazy? Or just stuff that we put out there and didn't develop because it was too nutso to...
I think either one.
Yeah.
I like the idea of stuff that was scrapped.
You know, it's funny. There's not been anything that we've put on the show that we've been like, oh, that's too nutso to develop. There's been a lot of stuff we've thrown out that, I don't know, like, you know, there's stuff that we've written into the show that just kind of felt like a one-off joke and sort of, in the end, was a one-off joke, right? Like, nobody is like, whatever happened to those pteranodons or whatever? Like, that, I don't know. That was a one-off thing. We occasionally call back to it. I think in the book there's a joke referencing the pteranodons that come in around episode 4. And they kind of tie into the larger issue of like time and space in Night Vale being something weird. And that's always an ongoing plot point. But that was something that was like, I don't know, there's no reason necessarily to pursue that. I don't think there's anything that we felt was too out there not to pursue. There have been a couple of ideas that we have not put on the show yet. I have one in particular, and I wish I could tell you what it is on your podcast, but I will tell it to you offline someday.
Fair enough.
But yeah, I have one that is a pretty wild idea, and I've been reluctant to do it because, one, it's a lot of work, and I'm always reluctant to do a lot of work. And two, I think it would be a very polarizing thing to do. So I'm just going to steer clear of it for a little while, and eventually I'll put it out there just out of the blue one day, and then shut down my Tumblr and the Twitter account for a couple months.
Yeah, I bet that you probably have some pretty vehement fans about certain issues. It
is interesting though, because we do talk quite a bit about, before we make major plot points, about what we're going to do with something, because we do talk ourselves out of plot lines because we want to be inventive and different all the time. You can't avoid having tropes and standard plot lines and archetypes in your show. That's just always going to be there. You have to follow some form, but we're always trying to subvert those when we do develop a major plot line. And so I think there's some times where we find ourselves going a certain direction with a character, and we want to just be careful not to do a certain thing. I mean, I think, so Cecil and Joseph and I will sit and talk about things and about like, let's not develop the character this way because I think that could be really boring because everyone's done that over and over again. Or I want to be careful. We talk constantly about the Cecil and Carlos relationship. Yeah. You want to be very careful with that because while you want the freedom as a writer to do whatever you want with a relationship, I want to be able to have them spend their lives together. I want them to have kids together. Or I want them to break up, or I want them to go through a hard time, or I want, there's any number of things a relationship can go through, but you want to be very careful, right? Because a gay couple in the media is a delicate thing. There's so many fewer of them in lead characters. So you want to be careful that what you're writing not only represents something you as a creator want to do, but also isn't being harmful to an entire group of people by falling into the same traps that every straight writer has fallen into in the history of television and storytelling.
And I do like that you guys are so conscious of that. And it's a thing that I've thought about while listening to the show as well, because I mean, as a person who grew up, really wanting for stories with queer relationships in them, it is true that so much of what you get is tragic. If there's a gay couple, one of them dies or one of them turns straight, or, that's just genuinely, in any lesbian movie, someone dies or turns straight. It's generally how it ends. Very rarely do they ride off into the sunset together.
Right.
But I do think, what has been going on in the show is an interesting way of playing with it, but while not, outright being like destroying both of them. Yeah.
Well, and you want to put a relationship through a hard time because you like the relationship, and if the relationship was always sunny, I don't think that's a realistic depiction of any kind of couple, gay or straight, or however you want to define couplehood, and I think that's I think everyone, I've had this in my life in the last year being on tour, and I have had many times where I've been in long distance relationships, and you have this yourself, right?
Oh, yeah.
Of traveling. You just got back from LA, and
Yep, and now I'm like a month and a half till I get to see him again. So
yeah, and they're
worst.
hard, and they're not just hard because you miss the person. They're hard because communication is different, and it's difficult to always understand where that person is coming from. It's difficult to like work through problems because you don't have eye-to-eye contact. It's there's just so much being present with somebody makes relationships easier, right? And so we just felt like the Carlos Cecil relationship this year, like that was an interesting way of putting them through, I think, a normal trauma of a relationship, right?
I've totally listened
happens.
to a couple of those. I listened to one on a plane when I was actually leaving Jeremy to come back to Halifax, and I listened to one of the episodes, and I was just sitting there like, damn it, guys. Can you just be together? Just go back through the door.
Right.
Which I totally get that, and I think that is a pretty interesting way to do it, because I mean I have become over so much time, like so many people, so invested in that relationship. I mean, I'm still a fan, right? And I remember when I was sort of first getting into it, and when things first happened in that relationship, because I used to listen to it going to sleep, like right before I went to bed, I would just listen to it in bed. And when things first started to happen in that relationship, I remember like lying in bed, like squealing, just kicking my feet, being like, "This is so cute," because it is, especially amidst all that horror.
Yeah,
but I think it is cool. I like where it's going. I'm so
you
curious.
drew my favorite ever, still my favorite ever fan art of the show. I don't want to say fan art, but I don't.
It's fan art. It's fine.
It's fan art.
I don't look down on those terms at all.
Which was the girl in bed.
Yeah.
The Welcome to Night Vale, the girl in bed listening to the radio with the stars in the sky. And I'm like, that's awesome. That was so much my experience listening to the radio growing up, and I just think that's one of the great things about listening to people talk on the radio late at night. There's something super soothing and comforting about that.
Oh, it's great. It's the best. I mean, I came to the show, and I've talked about this before, but I came to Night Vale listening to it in the backseat of a car on like a 9-hour road trip at night. And so I listened to, we would stop at a McDonald's, and I would download like 12 more episodes while my friends were getting like chicken nuggets. It's just like, hold on, I need to listen to it. And just sat in the back of the car and driving through America listening to it, which I think is basically the ideal situation for listening to Night Vale.
Yeah.
One thing I am going to recommend to you now, before I do my closing out, where do we find you thing, is are you a video game person ever? Like, ever?
From time to time. It's kind of the same thing with comics. I think I was into it really, really young, and then as I've gotten older, I've gotten back into like hearing things about video games, but I'm not super knowledgeable. You
can get it on Steam. It's like a PC or computer. I play it on a Mac game called Kentucky Route Zero.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep.
Did I talk to you about this before?
No,
or
but
somebody
I've heard
else
so
might
much
have
talk about this that I do need to get this.
You
game.
should play it. I mean, I can totally understand why people would be like, "Oh, this is sort of a similar vibe to Night Vale," because it is like weird surrealist Americana stuff. But it doesn't take, like, I played most of the game in a day. It doesn't take a super long time, but it is really cool. It's really like the mechanics of the game and the way that it works and just the stuff that it does. I think you would like. It's a good thing if you have a day off or something.
I will absolutely.
If that ever happens.
Yeah. I'm about to have to fly to Seattle, so maybe I can download it and play on the plane.
It's really cool. I think you would definitely be into it.
I recently played. Last year I played Gone Home.
Oh yeah, that's what I was just gonna say.
It's just so beautiful, and I loved
good.
it so much, and I've played it a couple times since then. Just because once I got to the end, I was like, oh man, there's so much more to know here, and kind of going back through and relearning the story as you piece it together, and then. I'm also excited for Night in the Woods. Yeah,
because I played Lost Constellation, which was that first like little bit that came out with it, or like in advance, and that looks awesome. It
does look really, and the dialogue on that game, that Night in the Woods, is really funny.
It's so
really
funny
sharp.
and weird and like real. Like that's so much of like, okay, whatever, what? Which is how I write dialogue. I try and write like real people talk. So it's so funny to see that done, but it's much, much cleverer. But I love it. Yeah, that's sort of like my holy trinity of games. Even though Night in the Woods isn't out yet.
Yeah,
But it
I'm
looks
super
so good.
excited for it to come out, though.
So if people, obviously it's very easy to find Night Vale on the internet, but if people want to listen to it, it's on iTunes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's on YouTube now?
So there's no video. You should just listen to the episodes on YouTube. We have a lot of people that are like, I listened to your show on YouTube. I'm like, I didn't know we were on YouTube. Guess we should go on there.
Yep.
But I would say on YouTube, it's really if you are going to any of the live shows or have to miss any of the live shows, Dylan has been making these super wonderful like little 2-3 minute clips of taking like interviewing fans and having them ask questions, and then
cool.
some of us backstage answering the questions, and it's sometimes me or Joseph, sometimes Cecil, sometimes it's Dylan himself or Dessa or Mary, our musical guests, and so there's some really, really fun stuff on there too. So YouTube's cool for that too.
That's awesome. I want to see those. That's really cute. And on Twitter, you guys are at Night Vale Radio. Where else? And you are?
I'm at Happier Man on Twitter, and I'm the same name on Tumblr as well. Although I'm less, my Tumblr tends to just be my Instagram feed. With every now and then I'll write a little short essay or reblog Kate left. And,
that does happen occasionally.
So that's it.
And the book is called?
The book is called Welcome to Night Vale.
Oh, there you go.
Novel. And,
keep it simple.
It's going to be out. It's available pretty much wherever on pre-order. Yeah. Wherever you can pre-order books, I think they have it now.
Cool.
Which is weird to be on like a legitimate like publishing house and having them put it everywhere. So and then it'll come out later this October, and hopefully we'll have a book tour then.
Yeah, that'll be cool.
It will be cool.
That's so exciting. I'm so excited for you guys.
Oh my gosh, I'm crazy excited for us and what's going to happen. And and then everyone should come to New York in early June, and you and I and everyone else listening will hang out that day.
Yep.
It'll be great.
Well, I'll just go to a bookstore and
yes,
everyone bring flasks. We'll all just get drunk in a bookstore. If we actually announced that, we would like hundreds of people would come. It would probably be really fun.
The flask convergence on Word in Greenpoint, Brooklyn. That'd be great. I'd love it.
Oh, that'd be awesome. Well, thank you so much for talking to me, Jeffrey. I will let you get back to your life.
Thanks. I can't wait to see you again. And thanks for having me on your show. This is delightful.
Thank you for coming on my show. I'm glad you could make the time. And I will talk to you soon. And everybody go find everything Jeffrey does on the internet and go find everything Night Vale on the internet. There's a lot of it, but it's all delightful. Have a lovely day. Thanks, Kate. I'll talk to you soon. Okay, bye.
I know that you want into the pages inside my heart.
Well, that's our show. You can find me next at the Toronto Comic Arts Festival, May 9th and 10th. Until then, visit our brand new Comixology page at comixology.com/lessthanlive, where you can check out my stuff and all of the comics I recommend each episode, where there's previews and art, and you can get way more info than we normally had on our show notes. Did you skip the sponsor message? Look, go back. There's a secret deal, and you get cheap comics. In the meantime, rate and review us on iTunes and Stitcher. If you like the show and want to help us find out exactly what is beneath the Desert Flower Bowling Alley and Arcade Fun Complex, consider supporting our Patreon at patreon.com/lessthanlive. That'd be cool of you. If you've got questions or want more, find us on Facebook or on Twitter at LTLcast, and you can still get show notes at lessthanlivecast.tumblr.com, but we'll have the Comixology link now, so you can actually go look at the comics. It's pretty cool. Stay warm, everybody. Have a great time. I'll miss you.
Hey, Amnesia Forgetful Face. This was a Village Soundcast Network original production.
We just have the one cat with the scrunchy face.
Okay.
When that's Simone.
Yeah.
And he is ageless. And then we have Other Cat.
Okay.
Who was named Minu, but we referred to as Other Cat.
Okay.
It's the way the union requires it to be listed in the credits.